Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ya'acov Oryah experience. I'm Brad. For those of you who don't know me, we're just going to give it a little bit of time for any latecomers to show up before we get the evening started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We look very forward to introducing you or furthering your story with Ya'acov Oryah. I'm sure some or most of you are already familiar, but we look forward to expanding that. We're also live on Facebook for those who care. One more quick question. And that's only going to be the people who are talking, by the way. So one more quick housekeeping while we're here. Ya'acov stayed up into the wee hours of the morning for us. Thank you so much for doing that. But it's always lovely if we can talk to faces rather than names. So if at all possible, this is not a requirement, but if at all possible, could you go camera on so we can see your pretty faces while we're talking? That would be lovely. If not, you can put on your makeup. That's fine too. But that's just the one little ask. We're just going to give it another minute or two just to wait for any last minute stragglers. And then we will get going. So as a quick reminder, we're going to be tasting through the 4 wines with Ya'acov tonight. We're going to be tasting through the Ya'akov's Playground Single Vineyard Chardonnay, the Alpha Omega Gewurz, the Human Touch, and the SOB 2018 vintage. If you want to open them all, please do. I am. If you just want to pop a bottle or two to taste along, that's fine too. Whatever works for you. Remember, it is Shabbos tomorrow, so plenty of time to drink up your wine.
And just as a note, this is being live streamed on Facebook as well. So if you saw a little consent pop up, that is what that is about.
But your face will not be shown if you're on talking, so you can just stay on mute. Last thing before we get going, we are manning the live chats. If you have any questions as we go, anything that was mentioned, please put your question in the chat. And we will get to it or try and answer it if it can't be answered via chat. And then, sorry, I'm fogging up here, guys. It's schwitzy here in New Jersey. And then there will be a little bit of a Q&A at the end of the night with Ya'acov. So without further ado, let's get started, and other people can join when they join. Thank you for joining us this Thursday evening for the Ya'acov Oryah experience, where we get to learn from and taste along with probably, in my opinion, the most exciting and innovative winemaker in all of Israel, producing some of my favorite wines out of Israel that I've had recently. We're very, very lucky to import Ya'akov's wines and bring them to this country and share them with the amazing US market. We've been very lucky to do that just this year. And we just wanted to take the opportunity to share that with you. So Ya'acov, as I said, joins us very, very late at night. Thank you so much for being here, Ya'acov. And on that note, please take it away, Ya'acov. Please tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good morning. If anybody's here from Israel. At some point in my life, at a later stage, I started to get fascinated by wines. And I did so without a background. It means I did not grow up in a house that drank wine. I didn't know what wine is supposed to taste like. I didn't have any right and wrongs in the back of my mind. And I didn't have the opportunity or time to go to school at a later stage of my life when I was already a parent to 4 children. So I inevitably, I right away opened a winery. so somebody will let me touch the wine. And I started to experiment because there was a lot of knowledge there that it was just not available to me. I didn't know what to do, what not to do. So when I had an idea, I just tried it. And over the course of time, it took me to a lot of corners of winemaking that are not necessarily the mainstream. And I developed my own brand, but thank God I was not relying on it financially. I was a winemaker of Psagot, and now I'm a winemaker of Pinto Winery. And that gives me a lot of freedom. It gives me a lot of freedom to, my livelihood is not dependent on the fact that I'm going to sell wine. So it gives me, the company has to sell the wine. So, I'm very happy that I have a crowd out there that appreciates what I'm doing. But it gave me also the freedom to not focus on Cabernet Sauvignon and a rich over oaky and over alcoholic wine, because that sells. So along the course of time, it somehow became an experimental brand. And we're going to go through a few wines tonight. Actually, the first wine we're going to go through, we could talk about it a whole day, just that one. It's really an end of a very long process of thinking, research, more thinking, trials, errors. The main idea that I'm trying to deal with, and it's taken many stages, but it basically is making elegant wines in hot climates. That's really to sum it all up, because it's very simple to make a rich, heavy wine in a hot climate. It's also simple to harvest early and get a low alcohol wine, but it's very dull and boring and nothing exciting going on there. The ability to combine the two ends, where you get a wine that's complex, interesting, delicious, ageable, and has enough content to take it forward and develop, and at the same time not be heavy in your face, alcoholic, cloying, something that's still refined. It speaks interestingly to you, but in a normal voice, not in a bass or with heavy drums. So it's a dissonance. It's not a matter of making wine. It's a matter of focusing on the aesthetics of wine. To make wine, just ferment grapes. And you don't need winemakers to do that, by the way. For thousands of years, people made wine without winemakers. But if we're talking about balance, and we're talking about interest, and we're talking about wines that are intelligent and keep you interested, and they develop, and doing that in a hot climate is something that requires a playground. And that's what my brand turned out to be. It turned out to be a playground for all these experiments. I take the knowledge, to my day job, and I make the best wines I can for my employers. But the playground itself is within these wines.
I love that, and I love that about your wines. And so you touched on it, right? And you touched on the idea that this was a pursuit of knowledge and a pursuit of artistry and excellence versus a pursuit of making money, right? So but you do have to make money, right? And that's why you have your part-time job at Pinto and Psagot. So how do you still, even with all of that, have the time to put together the amount of SKUs that we carry from you in a single vintage? How many different wines are you making? Keeping that all together seems like a full-time job. How are you able to spread yourself across so many different projects, I guess, at once in this playground of yours?
The spreading out is easy. The controlling myself and not spreading out more, that's the challenge. And the truth is that it starts with what you said before. You know, it's the business has to be sustainable. I mean, I have to sell the wine so I can continue producing another vintage the year afterwards, but it's not where I take my livelihood from. And if you have an interesting barrel and you have a commercial winery, you don't have the privilege or the opportunity to bottle it because it's good. You just can't. You know, you eventually there's a certain portfolio, you have to fit everything into it or out of it, and that's what you sell. You know, the ability to take a barrel, said, oh, I like this barrel, let's make it let's bottle it by itself, or a blend, or it's something that I could do. The fact that I could do it doesn't mean I should do it. It doesn't mean I always do it. And in my skin macerated portfolios, I spread out a lot into a lot of 10 labels, 11 labels, because I thought I would express the idea of what a skin macerated white is. And in the course of 3-4 years, I realized that I even in the tasting, I can't go through 10 wines, even if it's just, skin macerated wines. So, and some of them are overlapping. Let's say the Gewürztraminer is overlapping with the ontology of spice. So I'm in a process on one hand of, focusing, and not every idea that I have, I allow myself to bottle, because it just gets out of hand. On the other hand, I do like very much collaborations. I make wine with a lot of people. I have a service winery, and that's a place where I could explore my ideas without adding another label to my portfolio. So I'm trying to not expand more than I already am, but the expanding is not the problem. The ability to maintain your focus within spreading out is really a challenge for me. And I know I think I'm doing it well, but it's a challenge. It's not natural, or it's not a given that it happens that way.
Understood. So to that point, talking about the Ya'akov's Playground Chardonnay, talk us through the idea behind this wine. I mean, it's got an amazing story, and how you landed up here.
Well, this is actually the longest story. We're going to talk about it too much. We're not going to have time for the other wines, but we'll try to condense it. As I said, the challenge is making an elegant wine in a hot climate, and I went through many stages of doing that. As I mentioned, you do an early harvest, so your wine is dull. You make a late harvest, you get all the flavors, but it's too heavy and not fun. So I started to break down harvest into two. I have an early harvest, a later harvest, and one of them gives you the lean body and the minerality and the low alcohol and the great acidity. And the late harvest gives you all the flavors that the varietal is expected to give, because when you harvest premature, you don't really get that. And I started to simultaneously, at the same time, I was starting to focus on skin macerated wines, as I mentioned. And I have a friend, Simon Jacob, and he had a dream with his father. It's a true story. And he came to, and he drank in his dream. He drank with his father 2 forms of Chardonnay, one called Vim and one called Vigor. Okay, and then he told me about this dream, and I asked him, "Do you want to try to, create Vim and Vigor?" And he said yes. And I was thinking to myself, for Simon's sake, what is Vim? What is potential energy? Like, Vigor is available energy, and Vim is potential energy. What is potential energy? And my answer to myself was, it's skin macerated Chardonnay, because it's a Chardonnay blend. And the big surprise is that I added skin macerated Chardonnay into a white Chardonnay, And the big surprise was that it maintained the fact that it's a white wine. That means instead of becoming someplace in an unknown territory of something in between white and orange, or white and skin macerated, it actually maintained itself as a white wine with an addition. And for me, that was a revelation, because I'm trying to constantly harvest early and substitute with substance, fulfill the substance that are missing because I harvested early because I'm in a hot climate. And, it just clicked. And I realized that I have here a great source of fully extracted phenolics from the same grape that I could enrich my white wine with. Of course, it has to be with balance. So once I understood that, I said, okay, so, there's many ways of extracting flavors. You could do it in a barrel, you'll get a certain kind of flavors. And in a vat, you'll get a certain kind of flavors. In the early harvest, you'll get certain kind of flavors. In the late harvest, you get certain kind of flavors. And I said, instead of taking my wine to where I want it to be, or what I think it should be, which I usually do, you go out to harvest with a plan. I said, let's not plan. Let's just explore what the potentials of the grape or the vineyard are. And I just broke down the processes to bring it to an array of processes that each of them brought out a different aspect of the grape. And you have in there early, and you have late, and you have oaked, and you have unoaked, and you have skin macerated, and you have carbonic, and you have a whole array. Each of them it's the same thing. It's just a different facade of the same vineyard, of the same varietal from that vineyard. And again, it was an experiment, and the result was that the wines were so different. It would be wrong to just throw all the components into one vat and say, okay, it's complexity. So it was not fair to the wine, because some of them are very powerful. Some of them are are gentle, but you don't want to lose out. So you have to give them more space. You have to play with it to balance it out. So I sat down and I made a blend. I actually had 13 components. It's not really important. I could have had 15. I could have had 7. But it was just my attempt to break down, to deconstruct the potentials of the grape. And I had 13 components, and I, blended them together, and I got this this wine. And for me, it's a new way of winemaking, because you're able in a hot climate to get amazing, elegant wines that are really belong in very northern and very colder regions than what we have here. But when you, after you deconstruct, when you reconstruct, you don't give it the same natural proportions. So you put the proportions the way your aesthetics are. I mean, if I would give these components to a colleague, who would come out with a different wine, because the proportions are my saying on what's an aesthetic wine, what's pretty, what's beautiful, what tastes good. And there's no right and wrong there. So you can have there an array of answers. But this is my answer to those 13 components, and I think it's a new way of winemaking. It's on one hand, you could say it's erasing terroir, because there's so many human interventions that we're employing here. On the other hand, you could say it's super terroir, because you're actually taking all the potentials out of one single vineyard and breaking it down and letting it all express itself and say, that's terroir. That's all the potentials that are coming from this specific vineyard. So I don't really know how to say if it's super terroir or not terroir, but I think the wine is very young. First of all, it's almost hard to understand, because when you have, let's say I give you an example. You take your Chardonnay and you put it in an oak. So all the phenolics, all the flavors, and all the aromas are all oaky Chardonnay. So you have a lot of them. So when you take it out of the barrel, you have a lot of components saying the same thing. So it's a very clear voice. When you have that oaky Chardonnay as one of 13, So it's there, it's present, but it has a lot of, it's like a choir that they're all singing in different voices and eventually creating a harmony, but each voice by itself is not very clear and pronounced. It's the harmony that's slowly developing here. And these components are slowly bonding to each other. And I think today, you can understand the wine better in your mouth than in your nose. Because if you put it in your nose, don't put it in your nose, but if you smell it, you get very elegant, gentle, complex aromas. But all the richness of the wine and the potential where you see where it could actually reach and understand that it's just in the beginning of its path, you get in your mouth. It's like, it's layered, it's full, it's not heavy, it's not cloying.
It's lively and bright, but like you said, it's got that fullness and complexity, right? It's you know what amazes me? I'm in a position that I'm a little bit luckier than some of the other people here listening and tasting with us, and that is that I tasted this wine over Sukkot. I've kind of seen it evolve in a short period of time, but this wine's evolved tremendously in a very short period of time. How many years worth of aging do you think that there's a potentiality here?
I would like to say a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it will be a lot, but you know, to be fair to the consumer, I can't say that because it's really a new way of winemaking. It's really, there's no track record. Not talking about I don't have track record. This method doesn't have track record.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it as an educated guess that it has a lot where to develop to. You know, if you talked about what you get in your mouth, you also have at the end, after the finish, you have a mouth-watering sensation. There's a great acidity, and it's balanced with enough substance that it's not aggressive. It's very almost creamy, and you know, it has all the potential of a great wine, a big wine. But let's see. I have to be honest.
No, I'm excited to put away a whole bunch of the wines that you make that we currently import, but I might be most excited to see how this does over the next 10 years. It's, yeah, to me, I think this is so fascinating. The story behind it and your obsessiveness and compulsion to make 13 different wines and then blend them down. It's mad. Like nobody does that. But it's a very, very special wine. And I loved this idea. You sparked something in my mind, Ya'acov, that if you handed this to a good friend of yours who's a winemaker, they would express a completely different wine with these 13 different parts. And that struck something in me. I was like, this is, because it's a true expression of terroir, but it's also the truest expression of Ya'acov Oryah for that reason.
Exactly.
I love it. And I appreciate that it's Ya'akov's playground on the label.
And we do want to move on to the next one, but I do have a question actually. Ya'acov, did you mention which vineyard the grapes for your playground are from?
From the second year, I started to put it on the label, but they're all coming from one single vineyard in the north of the Golan Heights. It's a vineyard called Kerem Haruach, the vineyard of wind. It's actually a very interesting vineyard. It sits on a waterbed, so it's actually not irrigated. And the grapes mature very gradually, very slowly, nice round berries. I harvest them usually after or towards the end of harvest or after the reds. And in fact, I get pHs that are almost champagne in their pH, in their acidity levels. I get 3.1, you know, champagne is 3.05. It's sometimes better than what you get in Burgundy. It's just, somehow it's like a valley where all the cold the Golan settles into, and it's just very chilly there throughout the day. So it's really a cold climate grape. And yes, it's from one vineyard. In this year, I wrote single vineyard, but I didn't write its name. From 2022, it has the name on the label.
So you touched on it already, but Yaakov asked, are you acetifying this wine? Are you adding tartaric acid? Where does all that acidity come from? And I think you already made that clear. But
it's significant amounts of early harvest.
Mhm.
You see, the body of the wine comes from the early harvest. I like fresh wines. I like acidity. They're refreshing. I like minerality. I don't like fruit when they turn to be tropical. I like, white fruit, not overripe, not tropical fruit. And I get all that by harvesting early. So the vineyard is amazing. And we harvest early, you have incredible acidity. And then, everything else is just spice. You sprinkle on top some of the late harvest to give it the flavors that you want.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So you touched on this already, but you spoke a bit about skin maceration. Talk to us about skin maceration, what got you into it, what it means to you, and then I guess we can segue into the Alpha Omega line.
My ability to study wine was very limited when I started. So I just took a course in a winery. I made a jug of 25 liters of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. And that's all I knew about winemaking. And in this course, we constantly got the input of the importance of the skin. If you take a grape and you cut it, the flesh is green, it's green, because all the color is in the skin. And it's not just, so you ferment it with the skin, but what you get is not just color. You get a lot of richness and tannins and antioxidants and phenolics, and you get the whole richness of a red wine comes from the skins. And then I wanted to learn how to make white wines in 2007. That was in 2004. In 2007, I wanted to learn how to make white wines. I hired a consultant, and he told me, okay, we take the grapes, we press them, we throw away the skin, and we make wine from the juice. And I said, why, if the skin's so important with the red wine, they're so unimportant with the white, we just throw them away. And he said, well, that's the way it is. And I asked a few winemakers that I knew, is there any reason why we don't ferment with skins? And nobody said, no, that's the way you make white wines. And as I said, as I started in the introduction, I came in the house of people that didn't drink wine. I didn't know what's right and wrong. I didn't have a benchmark of how white wine is supposed to be. I didn't care. I was out there to figure out what nobody was able to answer. So I just, in the same year, 2007, when I started to make white wines, I started to make experiments with white wines with their skins. And eventually, 2010, I thought I had enough knowledge to make a product. And it's a wine that was released around 2012. It's actually the first Israeli skin macerated white wine. And Daniel Rogov came to the wine critic. He wrote books. It's been a while since we heard of him, but he was very important at the time. He was writing books on critical tasting of all the wineries in Israel. And he came to the winery. I gave him a taste of this wine, and he said, "Oh, this is orange wine." And it's like I'm 4 years into the production of this wine style, and I was very surprised that it has a name, and that he knows what it is. And I was also disappointed because I thought I invented the wheel, and apparently I didn't. Apparently there are other people in the world doing the same thing. But what I was doing is not exactly what they were doing, because they followed, it became almost a movement. They followed an idea that was driven from Georgia. Jasko Gravner came from Friuli. He went to Georgia. I saw them make wines in their Kvevri, in their buried clay vats, and he took that method to where he was, and he took that method with two components. One of them was with skin macerated, other one with sulfur free. And the reason why the genre got the name orange is not because of the grapes, it's because of the fact the wines were oxidized because it didn't have sulfur. I was making modern winemaking. The whole idea, just like I put sulfur in I put a lot of it, but just like I put it in my red wines, I put it in my orange wines. So they're not really orange. The right term would be skin macerated. And I was in the beginning making a very focused single wine, very, deep, the best wine I could make. And I realized that I'm sharing it with people that don't know what I'm talking about. And the complexity of using 3 varietals, you lose your varietal identification. You put it in a barrel, it goes through micro-oxidation. You get something which could be amazing, but it's not understood. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But what skin maceration is not something I was able to express through this great wine. So, so I took a step back and I started to make varietals. And varietals are understood because if you know Chardonnay, and here taste a Chardonnay with skin maceration, and Gewürztraminer we're having now. I'll join you. You see, if you look at the color, it's a little darker than a white wine, but that's not because of the oxidization, because it's Gewürztraminer. And Gewürztraminer, the berries are pink. So if you ferment them with the skin, you will end up with a little deeper hue to the wine. And I think it's really fascinating because people are familiar with the Gewürztraminer, and this is nothing like what they're familiar with, because you have here a serious wine. Gewürztraminer is a somewhat flattering wine and, friendly and easygoing. And here you have a wine with tannin and minerality and acidity and a structure, and it goes well with food, but it still maintains the Gewürztraminer aromas. You will get there the lychee, you will get there the rose petals, you will get there you have here an addition that you don't find in regular Gewürztraminer. That would be the citrus aspect. You'd have there the orange peel or the tangerine or something like that going on. And all those aspects are coming from the fact that it's a skin macerated, which has it has the regular dimensions and it has an additional dimension.
And I like that you're saying that it's not a simple wine. And Gewürztraminer so often is, even though Gewürztraminer is very aromatic and people, it's something that you can just drink and enjoy, right? I think that this wine is a conversation piece. I feel like anyone who I've ever tasted any of your skin macerated wines with are always just, they take a moment, consider, right? They take a sip and then don't say anything for a moment, because there's a lot to think about what you just put in your mouth. You're like, it looks like a white wine, but there's so much more going on than any other white wine I've ever had. And that's one of my favorite experiences is pouring this wine, or specifically the Chardonnay. That's the one I'm really in love with right now.
That's when we tasted it the first time.
Exactly. And just showing off something that is maybe a shock to someone's palate because it's just something they've never experienced before.
And that's really what you're expressing is exactly what I was trying to achieve by expanding my portfolio to varietals where people are familiar with on one hand and unfamiliar with what the grape really is able to give you. Again, you're familiar with half a story. That's why I call the series Alpha Omega, because it's saying from A to Z. Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet. Omega is the last one. So you say Alpha Omega, you're saying really from A to Z, which is the whole grape. When you taste Gewürztraminer or Chardonnay, you're really telling half a story. It's the story of the juice, not the story of the grape.
I like it. I like it. There's a pun there.
It's
Lovely.
definitely a showstopper, and it's so food friendly that I
Mhm.
think if you are looking for something unique, this is the bottle.
So if you guys have any questions, like I said, please put them in the chat. And let's move on from the amazing skin macerated Gewürz, which I feel like I'm just going to keep in my glass and keep revisiting, because since we popped it open at the beginning of the evening to now, it's just evolving. It's a different wine now than it was then. It's amazing how beautiful, and how every time you go back to that wine, it tells a different story.
And as we move on,
and
Brad, there's an
let's try the
interesting
human touch.
comment about the story. How Jeffrey, it says, how funny how the wine tastes even better when we hear the story behind it. It's a beautiful takeaway. And I just wanted to put that in there, Ya'acov. I think it's true. When you learn more about it, you appreciate it.
I agree. I think our appreciation of wine is not just flavors; it's culture, and the whole process behind it is not. It's not just the list of flavors and cherries and plums and whatever you have there. It's a lot more. I just one more note on, before we go to the red wine. One more note on the Gewürztraminer and in general the skin macerated wines. When you said they're food friendly, it's actually one of the few, not only the Gewürz, the whole series. It's one of the few wines that could pair with spicy foods. Usually when you have spicy foods, they clash with wine. You would probably have a beer if you really want to drink something. The skin macerated wines deal with them very nicely. It's a really different experience. It's a culinary opportunity.
All kinds of spicy food, like even Israeli spicy, like harif and sug, or like, because there's the traditional pairing of curry, right? Curry and like Thai food with Gewürz. But you feel like any spicy food works really well with skin macerated?
Well, if you go down to resolutions, you will find, I have one wine, it's a Semyon, skin macerated. Semyon ages amazingly, and when you add to it the ability to the antioxidants of the skin, the tannins, you get really a monster. When I used to go to restaurant pairings, I used to ask for the chef to bring a fresh cut green chili pepper, hot one, and it would be fresh with the wine. It was amazing. But that's true with the Semyon. If you already go down that path, there's a lot of fine tuning to be done, but in general they work with spicy food. Some of them work, yes, with Israeli food, with Israeli spiciness of peppers, of green peppers, chili peppers.
Very cool, very cool. Jonathan, you mentioned Semyon is one of your favorite wine varietals. Ya'acov is a master with Semyon, and he does some amazing things with it, especially as part of a blend. But you should definitely check out his white wine; they're special. So let's, Ya'acov, move on to the human touch.
Human touch. I'm going to rinse my wine.
Sorry,
my glass for my Gewürztraminer.
So all of the names of your wines are beautiful and poetic without us even knowing the story behind it. So can you enlighten us as to why this wine is called the Human Touch?
Yeah. It's a long story, but I'll tell the story.
It's why we're here.
When I told you I wanted to make wine, so I opened a winery. To have the ability to touch grapes and make wine. So I learned how to make wine, but apparently, I don't know if everybody knows this, but it's not enough. You also have to know how to sell wine, and you also have to know how to run a business. And those are two expertise that I did not have. So our winery closed down. We were not able to continue. And there was a vineyard that was planted for this winery that closed down. My winery was called Asif. And there was a farmer that planted a vineyard for me. the reason he planted it for me is because as I said, I have a service winery. I give production services to, it's like, I think in America it's called a crush pad.
Mm-hmm.
And I make wine with other people. And this guy, you know, from a very mediocre terroir, was able to get amazingly delicious grapes and wine. So I said, if I'm making already a vineyard for Asif, I'm going to plant it with this guy. So he planted it for me. And I didn't plant a vineyard. I planted a wine. That means I planted a GSM with a little Barbera to enhance acidity. I planted, you know, a few varietals. There was supposed to be a field blend, which, you know, the wholesomeness of the wine is already in the vineyard. And in fact, it's a lot of small patches that are almost uncommercial. He can't sell it to any winery because there's like 7 different varietals in a very small plot of ground. So he asked me, what am I going to do? So I eventually took my experiments that I started earlier and I turned my brand to be a commercial wine that sells around 4,000 or 5,000 bottles at the time because of this vineyard. And this wine, and the wine that I made from it was called Eye of the Storm, because it was really the vineyard sitting there and forcing me to, it was sitting there quietly, but the dynamics that it created around it forced me to actually take my miniature brand to a semi-commercial brand. So that was Eye of the Storm, and it was a lovely wine. I made it in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. And after 5 years, I realized that the wine is delicious and spicy and flavorful and not heavy and not ageable. It didn't have the ability to consist. After 5 years, the wine would start, you know, falling apart. It would become unfun. At the same time, I started to have increasing amounts of vineyards in the north, in Marom Golan, in the Golan Heights, and also there. The reason I took started to work with Marom Golan is not because of its terroir, because I was really fascinated with the grower. And just like, you know, in Yoram, the grower from the south that in a mediocre terroir was able to make delicious grapes, the guy in the north, Ido, he was just amazing. And everything that he touched was, you know, brought out the good of the terroir. Terroir is a dummy. You know, you could surface it and you could let it, you know, shine, or you could just treat your vineyard in a irresponsible way, to say it nicely, and all your terroir and the greatness of the terroir doesn't shine out. So really, what really shines out is the human touch. And I realized that my locations of vineyards are based on my grower. It's not based on terroir, it's based on the human person behind it. And I actually was able to solve my Eye of the Storm problem by adding to it some Merlot from the north of the Golan, which was very similar in profile. So it's really, this wine, it's a GSM&M, because it's Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, and Merlot. And Merlot is there as a structural enhancer. And because it's a cold climate, cold region, Merlot, the fruit is red and not black. So it also fit very well with the Grenache and the Mourvèdre. And I got a wine that I really solved my problem on one hand, and I was able to combine 2 growers, which were the human touch. And I think they deserve a lot of credit, because, you know, I could talk a lot about the wine I make and what I think and my ideas. If I don't get good material, I can't do anything. So, you know, and it's really the person there growing the grapes that allows me, when the harvest starts, to do something. So it's really a thanks to them, an attribute to them, and giving them credit for what their great work, what they do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah,
I hope the wine is too.
The wine is too, but who cares at that point?
We know that's getting clipped out for social media at some point.
That is a very, very beautiful and meaningful story, and a beautiful, for representing a beautiful wine. and you can taste that hard work, and you can taste that amalgamation of two kind of disparate things that come together and make something beautiful. This is very special. Thank you, Ya'acov.
Thank you. And when I get here in the wine, when I taste it, and I'm able to get here, and this is probably the best example for it, of a wine that is interesting and not heavy. You're able to get a lot of content without being overripe, without being over-extracted, with maintaining good acidity, maintaining a lean body, some minerality there in the background, bright fruit, things that I think are what make wine fun. They're not there to impress, they're there to drink.
Agreed. You're preaching to the choir here. That is, that's what I love about your wines, truly. It's how just drinkable they are. You pop a bottle and you share it, and you want to drink the rest of the bottle. And like, not to, I don't ever mean to poo-poo other winemakers, other wineries, whatever. They're doing what they want to do. But if you pour yourself a glass and it's just so intense, and all you want is that much, and then you're done, what's the point? Like you're not sharing, you're not enjoying, you're not eating, you're not drinking. And that, for me, that's what truly defines a wine. And I guess that's what gives the human life, right?
I once heard a sentence from one of my colleagues, Gil Schatzberg. He was a winemaker of Recanati. He said, "Remember, it's only a beverage, and it gives you humbleness and modesty. We're not saving the world here. We're having fun."
Love it. And let us now segue into the special Oryah blend, 2018 vintage. So tell us about this.
1 second. Okay, the SOB, getting back to Simon and Jacob here, and company. I have a service winery, the Crush Pad. And one day, the RCC of Jerusalem, the RCC of London, and members of RCC in America, and I don't know exactly where, I think a lot of them are in New Jersey, came to me, and they wanted to sponsor a wine that I'll do in the Crush Pad. I said, no problem, get me grapes, I'll make you wine. They said, no, we want you to choose the grapes, and you decide when to harvest, and you decide how to blend. I said, then it's not a Crush Pad wine, it's my wine. So I said, okay, so make your wine. So I said, okay, tell me, guide me. What kind of wine do you want? You want a Bordeaux blend? You want a GSM? You want Italian you want a heavy wine? You want a light wine? And they said, do whatever you want. And the do whatever you want was said with a spark, the smile and the spark in the eyes. Simon told me that. And in fact, I thought, okay, there's an opportunity for me to explore insights that over the years I developed about blending. So I started off with the Grenache. Grenache is a very interesting grape. It's very flavorful, also very light, and has a big body. And this big problem, it tends to oxidize. So, and to solve that problem, two approaches were developed. There's the approach of France and the approach of Spain. In France, you get a blending component of the Syrah. And in Spain, you get the Carignan and Grenache. So I said, that's a triangle. Let's take the Grenache, and it's two blending components. So we have 3 varietals, and we're going to add to that a softening agent and a toughening agent, a hardening agent. And I took to give it muscle and strength. I added, I gave the strengthening agent was Petit Syrah, and the softening agent was Pinot Noir. And I did this wine for 4 years. I did this wine in 17, 18, 19, and 20. And every year I tried to bring, with those components, I tried to bring the wine to a wholesome expression with a different blending motif. The 17 was just elegance and balance. 18 was a motif of strength, of muscle, of tannin. It's a more tannic wine compared to the other years. 2019 was, the motif was structure based on acidity. And 2020 was just a wholesome wine. We put everything all together and just making something that I really like. And here we're tasting 2018, which actually, because it's tannin structure, it's tannin based, it was almost inaccessible for like 2-3 years. It's just coming around now. It was a big wine as far as it's, you know, it's almost massive. And now it's at a very pleasant point. I'll just, you know, join you by tasting. There's a lot going on there. I think the wine is relatively still rather young, but it's already enjoyable. You could already enjoy it, and you could have, again, we're not tasting here a vertical with all the different ideas behind of the blending, but it's playing around with the same components to bring out different ideas. And I could say about this series that I love it. But I actually, I have Grenache and Syrah in my vineyard in Sde Moshe. I did not use my Grenache and Syrah. I actually sourced the best Grenache I could get in Israel. I was able to get 1 barrel. And I sourced the best Syrah that I could get. I was able to get 1 barrel. And I looked for old vine Carignan, and I got 1 barrel. And I got Petit Syrah from the high mountain, very structured and tannic. And it was a lesson for me. You know, it was an opportunity to explore. And I love the results. And I want to return to it, but I'm going to return to it when I have actually my own vineyards, where I can't continue shopping 1 barrel all over the country just to get the right Syrah and the right Grenache. And it's good for learning opportunity. And I believe that I will return to this wine, but right now it's just it was a good learning experience for me. Taught me a lot. And I think the wine is big, you know, it's a big boy.
It is. But even in that sense of maybe more traditional, bigger style Israeli wine, it's still elegant and refined. And I understand that we're drinking it now, 5 years after vintage date, but very approachable and very much a wine I want to drink another glass of, right?
Look, the fact that I make it dense and rich doesn't mean I have it overripe. You know, we don't have the jamminess here. Mm-hmm. It's not there. It's that's really what maintains its elegance. But if you want to understand how much tannin we still have here that's still unbonded, take a sip, swallow it before 1 second, and go like this. Wait, go swallow and go. And you'll get in the back of your neck, you'll get bitterness. Open your mouth.
Yeah, no, I feel it.
And that's a way of tasting unbonded tannins.
Cool.
I've never done that before. That is such a cool top tip.
Yes. I feel like it takes some skill too. Like if you spit it out the first time, it's like, I feel like that takes some skill too, but it's a good tip. I felt that bitterness.
It's not in the, it's not when you drink it.
It's in the back.
It's in the, but it's not when you drink it. It's when you take in air after you swallow. That's when all of a sudden that sensation surfaces, and you realize this wine has a lot where to go to still. Mm-hmm. Still has a lot where to go to.
I definitely have never, that's a new tip for me then too, because I was doing that the wrong way.
By the way, for those of you who've never had the SOB or are looking to explore it, we are lucky enough to have the full vertical of 18, 19, and 20 in stock. So you can get the full SOB progression and experience, and it may come back one day, but for now, that's where we're at on SOB.
And I just want to point out it's tiny quantities. The mass of the wine goes to the people that sponsored it. They got it almost at cost. And I had a little bit left for myself, which I'm selling, but it's really limited and not a lot of it.
Fantastic wines. So, in 5 minutes that we have people here, please go ahead and ask any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask live if you would like. We're happy to take any questions if you have any. How do we order? That's a fantastic question. You are going to get a special offer very shortly, probably tomorrow. Either tomorrow or Sunday. Maybe
Sunday or
Monday. Okay. That is exclusive because you registered for our amazing tasting with Ya'acov. And we have got a full selection. Everything is still in stock. There's a few things that are about to disappear, but it will be available on Kosherwine.com, and we look forward to getting your answer. Okay, Ya'acov, the question from Ya'acov is, what is the future of your winemaking, and where are you heading stylistically?
Great question.
I guess that's interesting. Yeah, what sort of evolution are you seeing in your style?
Okay, that's something I'm actually giving a lot of thought to, because people grow up and a portfolio grows up, and what you do as a teenager you don't do as an adult. And I've been giving a lot of thought. What do I want to be when I grow up? And first of all, my fascination is with white wines, and skin macerated white wines, and dessert white wines, and sparkling white wines. And in general, white wines fascinate me. But from that whole aspect, I think the playgrounds and what it represents, for me, is something that I found or was able to solve a problem that I was bothered by for 15 years. For me, it's the new winemaking. What started as playground in 2021 is actually turning into a series. And I'm going to be making more wines with this idea behind it of deconstructing a single vineyard, seeing its potentials, and reassembling it to a wine that to me is aesthetic. And that's really my big thing. My skin macerated aspect of the portfolio will continue, but in a more focused way. I'm not going to spread all over the place because it's pointless, and I'm going to eventually, choose the right grapes to continue with, to express different aspects of what skin maceration could do. Let's say Gewürztraminer will probably stay there because, as you said, it's mind-blowing. So that's part of the understanding what it is, what this method is. In reds, I am seeking to replant my vineyard. My vineyard in the south is the owner of the vineyard is developing his own wine brand. He wants the vineyards back to him. So I'm in the process of planting my vineyards up in the north in the Golan Heights. And I will be continuing the same wines, but with, I think, better terroir. And that's when I grow up. And when I get old, the far future, my dream is to make a experimental vineyard of the ancient Israeli vines and try to figure out really how to grow them, how to make wine from them, because today you will find wines coming from those grapes, but they're, besides the fact that we could talk that's the wine that King David drank, or that's the wine Jesus drank, depending what religion you're from. They're not really impressive as a wine. They don't really stand on their own two grounds. They stand on the uniqueness of them, on the history of them, on the curios of them, but not of what they really are. And that's something I really would like to solve one day. When I get old, I'll figure that out.
I love it. I have this dream in my heart one day. I don't know if you heard about that project in Pompeii where they found grape seeds and then they figured out how to did you hear about the story?
No.
Oh, they found grape
I
seeds.
heard about it in Israel. Things are going out like that in Israel. That's why we found the ancient grapes, but not in Pompeii.
So it's not you're saying not just Batuni and Marawi and the ones that survived as table grapes. You're saying the ancient ones that don't exist anymore.
Oh, they exist. They're now in the process of being cleared from viruses, so they have healthy growing material. And even Batuni and Marawi, they're not impressive.
Yeah,
but maybe they could be.
Okay.
Maybe if you learn how to grow them differently, and you will get different results. Right now, everybody, they just wanted to make a wine of ancient grapes. They did it so fast without really giving proper attention to how to grow them and how to prepare them, and really making a serious wine out of them. That was skipped.
I'm on board. Choo choo. So, okay, a couple more questions, Ya'acov. Jonathan asks, you may have mentioned it and you did, but maybe can you just recap he understands the GSM part of the human touch.
Yes.
But can you explain the inclusion of the Merlot and the Cinsault? So the Merlot came from up north. I don't even remember you mentioning the Cinsault actually.
I didn't mention it. It might be on the label.
Yeah, it is on the label, 16%.
It is on the label. No, it's not. Not on this one. Sometimes I have it. Okay. In the vineyard in Sde Moshe, the southern vineyard, I have mainly Grenache and Syrah. Secondary to Grenache and Syrah, I have Mourvèdre and Cinsault. And then I have also an acid corrector, I have Barbera, and a tannic corrector, I have Petit Syrah. That's really what the vineyard is there for. Recently, I have been making a wine called Light from Darkness, which is really a translation of Blanc de Noir from French. And a lot of these grapes go to that wine. It's a white wine from red grapes. And let's say the Barbera goes there, and the Cinsault goes there. The Petit Syrah goes to a Rosé. So I'm basically left with Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, mainly. And sometimes some years it will fluctuate. I have maybe a little bit enough Cinsault to allow to put in the blend. I will. Sometimes I don't have enough Mourvèdre. It doesn't go in. The main aspects are the Grenache, Syrah, sometimes, and secondary Mourvèdre, and the Merlot. The Merlot is usually around 25% of the wine, enough to give it structure without interfering with the profile of the GSM.
Cool. And the Merlot comes from the north, and that's where the human touch story comes from, bringing together the two different growers to make the single line. And then
only the Merlot comes from the north.
Yeah.
Everything else is southern.
Got it. But that was the final missing piece, right? To make the wine what it is. Okay, Randy, his friend KC, or his friend in KC, I'm not sure, asks, so he sees so much color in the skin macerated wine, and you mentioned that there is skin macerated wine in the Chardonnay. Why do we not see that color in the Chardonnay when we pour it into the glass?
I want to show you something. I don't know if I'll be able to get it across. I will try. I don't know how clear this shows.
Yeah, we can see that.
You see that?
Yep.
That's Gewürztraminer. You see the color of it? It's not a green grape. It's not a yellow grape. It's pink.
Very pink.
So in the Gewürztraminer, you have a pink grape, so it has actually color. And if you get the darker color and not from the skin, it will be from oxidization. But in the playgrounds, it's a small component. It's not overtaking the wine. And again, I talked about the fact that I'm reassembling the wine according to my aesthetics. My aesthetics is here. The idea behind my aesthetics is I'm making a white wine. So the skin macerated is a component to compensate the fact that my vine was not in a cold climate and therefore it didn't get enough vine time, and therefore I didn't harvest in November, and therefore I'm missing aspects. I'm compensating from the skin macerated component, but I'm never going to allow it to overpower the wine and become a skin macerated wine. It's a white wine. It's a compensating component for lack of substance because of my hot climate. So I'm there to make a white wine. And that's what I said, it could be that my colleague that would get the same components would say, no, we need more. And he would put a bigger percentage of the same skin macerated and get something different.
And to clarify that point, Randy and Casey, you guys should try the Alpha Omega Chardonnay, which is 100% Chardonnay, 100% skin macerated, and you'll see the color in that. And I'm telling you that for the experiment to see the color, but also because Randy, you trust my recommendations, that is a bottle of wine you need to try. Cool. So on that note, what I want to do is just say thank you to Ya'acov for joining. Ya'acov, if you've got, I know it's very late for you, if you've got 5 more minutes to hang out, if there is any more questions, please.
At this point, I gave up on sleep already.
Okay, so if anyone has any more questions while we have Ya'acov, please feel free to post them. But for now, I just want to say, Ya'acov, L'chaim, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule in the middle of your nights. I know you had important things like sleep to do. We greatly appreciate you joining. Thank you everyone who did join. And we were so happy to introduce the beautiful wines from, like I said, my favorite winemaker in Israel, Ya'acov Oryah. So l'chaim to everyone who joined. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.
And if you have any more questions, please feel free to pop them in. Otherwise, we can say good night. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. Yeah, no more questions. Oh, there is another question. Never mind.
There's always another question.
So do you think that yeah, exactly. Do you think that skin maceration provides more aging potential for the wine? And how will a skin macerated wine develop? So let's ask the question before all of that first. What's the oldest single variety? What's the oldest skin macerated wine you have right now?
Well, I have my initial experiments from 2007.
Okay. I
did that year Gewürztraminer and French Colombard. And I never thought I would actually get involved with Gewürztraminer because it's not a grape that I usually appreciate very much. It's just it's a lovely grape, but just too much. Am I still on?
Yep.
Oh, I lost my screen.
Oh, we can hear you and see you.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll continue without seeing you and hope you. But I tasted, I tasted the Gewürztraminer of 2007, and there developed something so complex, interesting, and sophisticated that I returned to it. And over the course of years, I realized that there's 2 elements going on here. One of them is enhancing and promoting ageability, and one of them is deteriorating ageability. And it has to do with oxidization on one side, and tannin on the other side. And if you make a wine in oak, okay, let's say we talk about the Melchizedek. Melchizedek is the high end of the skin macerated wines. You still with me?
Yep, we're here.
Yeah, that's good. I'm looking at a screen that it says on its Zoom. Anyway, if you take a Melchizedek, so the tannins are integrated properly into the wine, and the wine ages amazingly and develops and continues to develop. When you make a wine that is not oaked, then its ability to age is based just in tannin and your ability to protect it from oxidization. So some wines do great and some wines do less, depending on the varietal. I must say that I found that specifically in 2018, the wines did not age very well. And what I mean to say is that they matured faster than I thought they would. Nothing happened to them. They didn't decompose or deteriorate, but they just matured quickly. And from 2019, for some reason, they're doing much better. I think it has to do with the cold stability that I did in 2018. Took away some of its acid and probably rounded it off the wines. But from 2019, I find the wines to age around on an average 5 years. And the wines that go into oak, which are mainly the Malki Tzedek, but also wine that I make for a restaurant in Tel Aviv called Brut, where they get Semyon in an oak, in an oaked version. So when you put it in oak, they last a lot longer. So these wines are really not meant for long-term aging. On the other hand, you're tasting now 2019 Chardonnay. We're 4 years ahead. It's doing great, but that's not the purpose of the wine. The purpose of the wine is really to understand the difference between, appreciate the difference between skin macerated and not skin macerated, and drink it. It's not designed for long-term aging. Had I wanted to design it for long-term aging, I would oak it, but that's not what I'm trying to do. They're pleasurable, they're enjoyable, and they're to be consumed. That's what they're there for.
Amen. Thank you so much. Ya'acov said.
Got you there. Found you. See you again.
Oh, great. There we are. Now that you see us, I think we should, unless there's any more questions, I think we should let Ya'acov try get a little bit of shut eye before the workday.
Not gonna happen.
Okay. Well, then get started on your workday. Thank you so much.
Good thing it's the weekend.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, tomorrow is the weekend for you. I forgot about that.
Tomorrow you get to cook.
Yeah, there we go. Are you the cook in the family?
Not alone, but to definitely participate.
Great. I guess I've got a question for you. When you're not drinking Ya'acov Oryah wines from Israel, what are you drinking?
On the contrary, I very rarely drink my own wines. I always use,
then always, what are you drinking?
When I drink, I use the opportunity to taste new things. It's inspiring, it's educating, it expands broadens my horizons. At work, I drink my wines when I'm doing them for work purposes. But if I would go out to a restaurant, I would go out with friends, I always try to taste something new.
Very cool. Anything that stands out from Israel that you enjoy, or you don't have to mention? That's fine too.
I would say the sad, but it's not sad because it gave me a lot of motivation in life. My passion is in Burgundy, and that passion is what created the dissonance, which sent me on this route and track of trying to figure out how to make elegant wines in a hot climate. So I'm not going to say it's sad, but that's where my palate developed. I knew nothing about wines, and I somehow stumbled upon an importer of Burgundy wines, and I started to join his tastings, and all I knew about the wine world was Burgundy.
It's a rough place to start, Ya'acov. I'm sorry.
Yes, definitely.
Oh man, what a tough place to start. Yeah,
it really was. It gave me a lot of difficulties as a winemaker because I was,
a high bar.
Here in Israel trying to make a Merceau. Didn't work.
No, but to that point, I think that there is an element of the balance, specifically in your 200% varietal Chardonnays that we import. In my opinion, I think that your skin macerated Chardonnay does something that just speaks to Burgundy for me. And I don't know what it is. It's like a sweetness of vanilla, which shouldn't exist because there's no oak. I don't understand why, but for me, that skin macerated Chardonnay speaks about Burgundy to me. And then the minerality that gets expressed in Ya'akov's playground, which makes sense now, understanding where it's from in the Golan, that has like a Chablis-like minerality and expression
Definitely.
to me. So I feel like those two Chardonnays do speak Burgundy to me, which I know you're probably happy to hear that. So,
The truth is, I'm not trying to make Burgundy in Israel. It's a matter of aesthetics. There's aspects of aesthetics of a cold climate. You know, you could take Gaia from Piemonte, and he makes a Chardonnay, which is lovely. I'm not talking about region. I'm talking about aesthetics. The aesthetics of the wine from Burgundy is what talks to me. I'm not trying to make a Burgundy here in Israel. I'm trying to make Israeli wine with aesthetics. The standards of aesthetics come from colder climates.
Got it.
That's my conflict and that's my challenge.
Well, we think you're doing a great job. So whatever you are doing, keep it up. Thank you so much. And on that
note, a final question: is your winery open for visits? If they were to visit Israel, how can they come see you, Ya'acov?
Okay, when I was a winemaker at Psagot, my wines were made in a separate winery. When I started to work at Pinto Winery, I started to produce my wines within my work at Pinto. So it's done really in one facility, the Pinto wines and my wines. The Pinto Winery is actually being opened now for the first time for harvest. You know, like in 2 weeks, we hope to be ready to receive grapes. The visitor center is planned. It's big, it's elaborate. It's going to have a lovely visitor center, but they will probably complete it after harvest, around October, November. So yes, if you could wait till October, November, we'll be very happy to host you.
in the Negev,
Wherever
correct?
it is. In the Negev, in Yerucham, yes.
Yerucham. And you're based in Yerucham or in the Negev?
Oh yes, I moved here in January, and these days these days we're actually moving the winery. You know, the vats are intact in place. All we need now is a little electricity, a little water, and we'll be ready for grapes.
Do you really think about what they were doing thousands of years ago when they weren't winemakers, Ya'acov?
Yes, definitely.
So best of luck, Hatzlacha with the move, Hatzlacha with
Amen. Thank
Crush this year. And thanks again so much for your time. It was enlightening. A couple of tears were shed over the human touch story. Thank you. We truly appreciate you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Have a great
Shabbat
weekend.
Shalom.
Bye, guys.
Hi, guys.
And thank you, Brad.
Always welcome. Bye, guys.